I flew above the Arctic Circle with Air Greenland. Air Greenland is one of the world's most fascinating airlines. They're the flag carrier of Greenland, the world's largest island, and an autonomous territory of Denmark. Air Greenland serves the island using a fleet of helicopters, a medevac King Air, and two very different types of airliners. They have a single Airbus A330-800neo that flies to Denmark, and 8 de Havilland Canada -8s that connect all the different communities with each other, mostly through the capital, Nuuk. A couple months ago, some friends and I checked Greenland off our bucket list, spending a week here, flying from Iqaluit, Canada. We knew we wanted to visit more than one part of Greenland, and ended up booking a domestic trip even further north, flying from Nuuk up to Ilulissat, and then back a few days later. Ilulissat is the third largest city in Greenland, and is home to the Ilulissat Ice Fjord, a UNESCO World Heritage Site that I'll talk about later. There were some truly incredible sights to see there, so this video will include the flight there, some points of interest, and the flight back to Nuuk. The way the flights ended up working out meant we arrived in Nuuk after our international -8 flight, went to the hotel, and left pretty much right away the next morning. We had some time to spend in Nuuk once we got back from this side trip though, and I'll show you more of the capital in a later video. Nuuk International Airport has been the center of a major infrastructure project over the last few years. Although Nuuk is the largest city on the island, it didn't have a runway capable of accommodating jet aircraft until late 2024. This new terminal was a major part of that project too, and has essentially one level for both arrivals and departures, and this nice open check-in area with a couple lines. We were the first flight out of here this morning, and got here probably a little bit earlier than we needed to, since security wasn't actually open yet. What we thought would be a short wait turned into more like an hour, as our original boarding time came and went, and we were still on the wrong side of the checkpoint. Eventually, we were told that there weren't enough staff to run things, and that they were working on getting some people to come in. There have been a few staffing-related issues with the new airport since its opening, including one high-profile case where the United flight from Newark had to turn around because the Danish Transport Authority found that security staff training didn't meet requirements for international flights. Given how much of a change relocating the main hub for the island has been, I think these sorts of issues are to be expected, but it's still not a great look. Eventually, somebody showed up, and security was opened. It didn't take very long, and we found ourselves in the departures lounge. Most of this area is, unfortunately, wasted duty-free space, but I do like the high ceilings, and the great views across the apron of the many -8s parked outside. The first of 2 -8s for this video would be the same plane that took us here the previous evening, Oscar Yankee Golf Romeo Papa, a 1996 built de Havilland Canada -8-200. We didn't have a whole lot of time to look around the terminal, since these planes do only seat up to 37 people, and understandably not wanting to delay themselves any further, it wasn't long till they called for boarding. Now officially, these -8-200 seat 37 passengers, but apparently they do carry some cargo in certain pairs of seats as well. Various combi solutions do exist, like Air Inuit's -8-300s, but I'm sure this gives Air Greenland a lot more flexibility when they don't have a sold-out flight. For today's flight, I'd be sitting in 8A, in the second last row. The legroom here is not as generous as the mid-cabin exit row I had on the last flight, but it'll do, and you get a nice clear view out the window without too much of the engine in the way.
Good morning, welcome aboard this Greenland to sail from bound for Ilulissat and Ghana. The flight time to Ilulissat today is estimated to be 1 hour and 15 minutes.
With that, here's us starting up for departure to Ilulissat, or so we thought.
Dear travelers from the cockpit, we have a technical issue that needs to be addressed by the mechanic. So please take your belongings and go to the terminal, and we will inform you in 30 minutes. Thank you.
So, long story short, they had everybody get off and put us all in the little international area that's separated from the rest of the departures. We waited about half an hour for them to resolve the issue, and then they had us board again. This puddle next to the number 1 engine was related, but it wasn't actually a problem.
Ladies and gentlemen from the flight team, we apologize for the delay. We had some technical issues upon starting the engines. We had some liquids running out of the engine. We have had the mechanic to look at it. The engine had been washed this morning The liquid we can see on the left side, it's only water. So we have had a mechanic to look at it, and everything is safe now. We are shortly ready for startup, and once we get airborne, we'll get back to you with some weather presents. We hope you enjoy the flights. Thank you.
After that little bit of excitement, we were finally on our way north, and here's the departure from Nuuk, making an intersection takeoff from runway 04.
Permitted to sit with blankets or outerwear on the lap during takeoff and landing.
Nuuk to Ilulissat is one of, if not the busiest domestic route in Greenland, with as many as 4 non-stop Dash 8 flights a day in the summertime. Quite a few of Air Greenland's flights along the coast operate as milk runs, so there are also several 1 or 2 stop options. This takes us pretty much directly north, crossing over the many fjords and islands along the western Greenland coast, then crossing into the Arctic Circle before landing in Ilulissat at 69 degrees and 14 minutes north, a new furthest north latitude for me. Today's flight would only take an hour and 15 minutes, and we had a couple nice views of the terrain below as we climbed up through the cloud layers and eventually above them into the sun. As you saw on the last flight, 3 months ago, Air Greenland has a typical classic Dash 8 tray table with a large seat back pocket underneath. In there was an air sickness bag, Air Greenland's excellent in-flight magazine, and a safety card for the Dash 8. On their domestic Dash 8 flights, Air Greenland just offers coffee, tea, or water, understandably scaled back from the international service. While we're here at cruise though, let's talk a bit about the geography of where exactly we're headed. Ilulissat is situated on the coast of Disco Bay, next to the Ilulissat Ice Fjord. That fjord runs about 40 kilometers to the east, right to the Greenland ice sheet. The glacier there, known as the Jakobshavn Glacier, is one of the fastest moving glaciers in the world, producing billions of tons of icebergs every year. That makes Ilulissat the most popular tourist destination in Greenland, and as you'll see later on, it's pretty clear why. This hour-long flight went by pretty quickly for me, especially after having subjected myself to 10 Dash 8s in a row a few years ago, and we soon reached our top of descent. We broke through another thin layer of clouds to Disco Bay below us, as well as the first of many icebergs over these next few days. Please enjoy these beautiful views as we arrive onto Ilulissat's runway 06. Ilulissat Airport is one of the busier ones here in Greenland, but with only a 2,700-foot runway, all scheduled flights here are on Dash 8s. The terminal is also pretty small, as you can see from this baggage claim area. All of that will change later in 2026 though, with the opening of a new airport here, which I'll talk more about later. Once we got our bags, we hopped on a hotel shuttle that served most of the major hotels in town. Our hotel for the next 2 nights had some gorgeous views overlooking part of the city and the icebergs in the bay. We found that the easiest and cheapest way to get around town was by bus, and it pretty much circles the whole town every half hour or so. We headed downtown in search of lunch, and found a restaurant on the top floor of one of the hotels. They were unfortunately fully booked for lunch, but had this rooftop terrace with an even better view of the entire city. That combination of brightly colored buildings and icebergs in the distance is just stunning. Now, while we were downtown, we also stopped by the office for Air Safari, an aerial sightseeing company based here in Greenland. Long story short, because that absolutely deserves to be its own video, we headed back to the airport and got some once-in-a-lifetime views above the Greenland ice sheet and just a couple hundred feet above the fjord. That wouldn't be the only other mode of transport we took that day, because we also booked a boat cruise around some of the icebergs. In my head, there's something a little twisted about actively seeking out icebergs in a boat, but seeing them up close was nothing short of spectacular. Now, the reason that these icebergs are all bunched together and don't just float away is that the large ones get stuck on a shallower part of the seabed just before they exit the fjord and float out into the bay. That's what creates this impressive sight of all these huge icebergs in one place. After the boat ride, we finished off the day with a meal at that rooftop restaurant and this beautiful sunset above the Arctic Circle. The next day here was much more relaxed. We headed to the Ilulissat Ice Fjord Center, a museum and visitor center located on the southern edge of the town. There they had lots of exhibits about not just the ice itself, but the cultural history of the whole region. The roof of the building doubles as another viewpoint, and there's a boardwalk that goes right to the edge of the fjord itself, along with a bunch of hiking trails. The views just get better and better as you go down the boardwalk until you reach the northern edge of the fjord. We stayed there for a good hour, just appreciating the view and the quiet, only interrupted by the sound of ice cracking in the distance. It's surreal, yet very peaceful. Heading back into town, we also walked by the sled dog center with lots of Greenland dogs out and about. Long before Air Greenland was ever a thing, sled dogs were a lifeline for communities around the island. They're so culturally significant that, while Ilulissat is home to about 5,000 people, it's also home to around 3,000 sled dogs. The puppies are free to roam, and we're all very curious. Tragically though, because they are working dogs, they're not meant to be petted by random strangers from another country, as much as I wanted to. We looked around town a bit more, and stopped at a grocery store to find that prices were not that different from southern Canada. Gas was also cheaper than most places in British Columbia. With yet another spectacular sunset, this really is a beautiful part of the planet that I'm so glad to have visited, and although I was sad to leave, we still had a couple more exciting days ahead of us in Nuuk. Now, I talked about Nuuk Airport's expansion earlier in the video, but a project of a similar scale has also been happening here in Ilulissat. Over the last few years, an entirely new airport has been under construction just north of the current one, with a 7,200-foot runway and terminal capable of handling larger aircraft. The new airport is scheduled to open in October 2026, and will almost certainly be a game-changer for tourism in the area. Interestingly though, the new and existing airports are not connected in any way, so I wonder what they'll do with the infrastructure here. Like I mentioned, the existing terminal is just big enough for a couple Dash 8-200s worth of people, with some seats and tables, and the check-in area just off to the side. Air Greenland had 2 check-in counters open here, as well as a couple things for sale. Anyway, we now had 2 A330neo models that I could only hope would fit in a Dash 8 overhead bin, and also somehow make it home. We were one of 3 flights departing around the same time this morning, and from what I could see, all 3 planes would also be arriving at pretty much the same time. Seeing as there's no security screening here, I went outside to grab a couple of these arrivals. The Dash 8 taking us back south was another 29-year-old Dash 8-200, registered as Oscar Yankee Golf Romeo Mike. This one stayed in North America for most of its life, starting out in 1996 with Mesa Airlines and flying for United Express, America West Express, and US Airways Express at various different times. It was then sold to Calgary-based Avmax and flew briefly for Canadian carrier Regional One before joining Air Greenland in April 2014. Now, I'm actually very glad we got this one specifically, because it paid a visit to Calgary back in February of 2024 for a heavy maintenance check, and I was there to see it arrive. It's super cool to get to fly on this plane where it's most in its element. There was also this Dash 8-200 in Icelandair colors, operated by Air Iceland Connect. During the summer season, this is Ilulissat's only international connection, although I'm sure that will change very quickly when the new airport opens, as you can see in the background. Meanwhile, back in the terminal, it was about as busy as I expected, and although ours was scheduled to leave last of the 3 flights, they ended up boarding ours first. Now, I should mention, in the interest of seeing another new place, we intentionally booked a multi-stop flight back south, flying to the town of Aasiaat first, on the southwest corner of Disco Bay, and then to Nuuk from there. My seat for both of these flights would be 1D, the bulkhead exit row at the very front, with 2 windows and probably the best engine view on these shorter dashes. Seat selection on Air Greenland's domestic dash flights is done first come first served during check-in, so I was lucky to grab this right when online check-in opened the day before. It wasn't long until the door was closed and we started up. Here's the departure from Ilulissat off of runway 06. This flight to Aasiaat was only 18 minutes long, heading directly southwest at 4,000 feet over Disco Bay. That gave us a nice look at some of these smaller icebergs that made it out from the Ice Fjord. The exit row here is definitely one of the better seats on these planes, just for the knee space alone. There are no tray tables, but the seat back pocket contents can be found in the door, with the only difference being an exit seating information card. In no time at all, we were already approaching Aasiaat. The town of Aasiaat is the 5th largest in Greenland, home to just under 3,000 people, and located on an island of the same name. The airport in Aasiaat is even smaller, with only a 2,600-foot runway, which really doesn't look like much from here. Like any de Havilland Canada airplane though, that's hardly a struggle for the Dash 8-200. This being a through flight to Nuuk, the turnaround was kept very short, and we were only on the ground for 20 minutes. I did ask if I could poke my head out for this quick glimpse at another Greenlandic airport. Three passengers got off here, and another 16 got on, the door was closed, and we were off on our way again. This last flight takes us almost directly south, but with some even better views of the western Greenland coast. It ended up being surprisingly clear for the first half of the flight, and we stayed below the clouds, so I was well entertained. Like the flight up, Air Greenland again offered coffee, tea, or water, but without the tray table, adding things can be a little bit tricky. Seeing all these different fjords and islands from just 18,000 feet, as opposed to 30-something thousand on the way between Europe and Canada, was extra special. It stayed clear up until around the Kangerlussuaq Fjord, the fjord leading to Greenland's former international hub of the same name. I still want to go there someday, and I will definitely be back. Greenland is now easily one of my favorite places in the world, and I can't recommend making the trip to Ilulissat enough. It will become a lot easier to go there by the end of the year, and I do wonder what sorts of routes we'll see. That is a big part of the reason why Air Greenland is adding a single A320neo to the fleet for summer 2027 to fly between Ilulissat and Copenhagen. Overall, minus the water hiccup while starting up and the security difficulties in Nuuk, these domestic flights with Air Greenland were lots of fun. I think there are still improvements to be made in Nuuk, because we arrived on this flight at around the same time that the A330 was on the ground, and it took well over an hour for me to get my checked bag. Still, there's nothing like flying a Canadian-built airplane over some of the most beautiful scenery in the world. Thank you so much for watching this trip with Air Greenland. I do apologize for the little 3-month break between this video and the last one, but next up will be some of that flight seeing over Ilulissat, and then Air Greenland's flagship. See you then.